The Galactic Exotic Creature Rehabilitation Center on Station Kepler 7 had seen countless species pass through its transparent enclosures, but none had stayed as long as Subject 4729. The dragon, a magnificent creature from the volcanic moons of Drakkar Prime, had been there for 3 standard years, curled in the corner of her habitat, scales dulled to an ash gray that betrayed her deteriorating health. Most beings who visited the shelter walked past her enclosure quickly. The Vryn found her fire-breathing capabilities too dangerous. The Keltorians considered her dietary needs too expensive. The Thrix simply couldn't comprehend why anyone would want a creature that couldn't communicate through their preferred psionic frequencies. Then Marcus Chen arrived. The human stood before the dragon's enclosure for nearly an hour on his first visit, hands pressed against the energy barrier, watching the creature's labored breathing. The shelter attendant, a 6-armed heptalian named Vrix, hovered nearby nervously. "Sir, perhaps you'd be interested in something more manageable?" Vrix's translator chip rendered his clicking speech into standard galactic common. "We have several plutonian crystal cats that require minimal—" "What's her story?" Marcus interrupted, his eyes never leaving the dragon. Vrix's upper arms fidgeted with his datapad. Subject 4729 was surrendered by a Drakkar merchant vessel 3 cycles ago. Her previous owner used her for arena combat until she refused to fight anymore. The psychological damage is extensive. She hasn't produced flame in 2 years, barely eats, and shows no interest in social interaction. Honestly, we've been considering humane termination." "Over my dead body," Marcus said quietly. The adoption papers were processed within the hour, though it took 3 days to transport the dragon to Marcus's habitat dome on the agricultural colony of New Saskatchewan. The other colonists, a mix of humans, Centaurians, and peaceful Graxan settlers, watched with a mixture of curiosity and concern as the massive creature was guided into the reinforced barn Marcus had prepared. For weeks, nothing changed. The dragon remained motionless in her new shelter, refusing the imported Drakkarian sulfur-rich meats Marcus offered. Other colonists began making jokes. Even Yara Okonkwo, Marcus's closest friend, expressed doubts. "Marcus, you can't save everything that's broken," she said one evening as they sat on his porch watching the binary suns set. "I'm not trying to save her," Marcus replied, taking a sip of his coffee. "I'm just giving her a choice she didn't have before." Every morning before dawn, Marcus would enter the barn and sit on a stool he'd placed near the dragon's resting area. He wouldn't force interaction or demand affection. He simply read aloud, human literature, agricultural reports, whatever he had on hand. His voice, calm and steady, filled the silence. Sometimes he talked about Earth, the planet he'd left behind 20 years ago. He spoke of mountains and oceans, of creatures called horses and dogs that humans had bonded with for millennia. He explained that humans had a strange habit of adopting things that others had given up on. "We're a stubborn species," he told her one morning during the 3rd week. "When the Vryn Collective said we'd never survive first contact, we threw a galactic barbecue. When the Keltorian Empire claimed humans were too emotionally unstable for space travel, we built 300 colonies out of spite." He chuckled. "Spite and stubbornness, that's humanity's secret weapon." On the 47th day, something remarkable happened. Marcus arrived at dawn as usual, carrying his thermos and a worn copy of Moby Dick. But when he opened the barn door, the dragon's head was raised. Her amber eyes, clouded for so long with despair, focused on him with unmistakable recognition. Marcus slowly smiled. "Good morning," he said softly. The dragon's nostrils flared. Then for the first time in years, a small wisp of smoke escaped her jaws. Progress came gradually after that. The dragon began eating, first the Drakkarian meats, then sampling the earth cattle Marcus had imported. Her scales began to regain their luster, shifting from ash gray to deep crimson edged with gold. She started moving around the property, always staying within sight of the barn but exploring nonetheless. The other colonists watched in amazement as the transformation continued. The dragon, whom Marcus had named Aurora after his grandmother, began responding to his voice, her massive head tilting when he called her name. She allowed him to approach, to touch the warm scales along her neck. But the true miracle occurred 3 months after her arrival. A Keltorian merchant ship attempted an unauthorized landing in the colony's agricultural sector, damaging several crop domes in the process. As the local security forces scrambled to respond, the ship's cargo bay opened, releasing a pack of escaped Vorgon hunters, vicious predators the merchant had been smuggling. The creatures charged toward the residential area where colonist families, including children, had gathered for a community meal. Marcus stood frozen for only a moment before running toward his barn. "Aurora!" he shouted. The dragon emerged, and for the first time since her arena days, her body tensed with purpose. But this time it wasn't fear or forced combat that drove her. As Marcus pointed toward the approaching threat, Aurora understood. She spread wings that hadn't fully extended in years. The membrane between the bones caught the light, revealing intricate patterns of gold and scarlet. Then she roared, not the defeated whimper of a broken creature, but the full-throated battle cry of an apex predator who had chosen to protect rather than destroy. Aurora launched herself skyward, and the Vorgan hunters scattered. Those that didn't flee quickly enough met a wall of dragonfire that painted the sky orange and gold. Within minutes, the threat was neutralized. The Keltorian ship was in custody, and Aurora landed beside Marcus, her breathing heavy, but her eyes blazing with life. The entire colony stood in stunned silence. Then a human child no more than 6 years old began clapping. The applause spread through the crowd. Humans, Centaurians, Graxons, all celebrating the dragon who had rediscovered her purpose. Yara approached Marcus as he stroked Aurora's snout. "I stand corrected," she said with a grin. "Maybe you can save broken things." Marcus shook his head. "I didn't save her. I just reminded her that she was never broken, just waiting for a reason to be whole again." News of the incident spread across the galactic networks. The Galactic Exotic Creature Rehabilitation Center reported a 300% increase in adoption inquiries. Beings who had previously dismissed Earth creatures as too emotional or irrationally compassionate began reconsidering their prejudices. And on New Saskatchewan, a human and his dragon watched the stars together, proving once again that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their warfare capabilities. It was their stubborn, relentless refusal to give up on anyone, no matter how broken the rest of the galaxy thought they were. Aurora's scales gleamed in the moonlight, and Marcus smiled. Sometimes, he thought, the universe just needed someone stubborn enough to care.